What I'm presenting is it's an opinion. It's not necessarily something that you're being taught if you go to school for analytics. What this is, it's not necessarily there's one right approach and there's one wrong approach. I think there are many wrong approaches and then there are many right approaches. The one I see that I'm presenting now, it's kind of a template that I think works fairly well, and we may have some different opinions tonight here, and you may have some different opinions as well, and we can discuss them and see where we agree and disagree. But this is one that I have seen now. So the traditional way of prototyping is really you focus a lot of time on the transformation layer. You spend a good amount of time figuring out your extract, your transform, and your load, and you have some really smart people in there figuring out what your transformation should be, what your fact tables should be, what your schemas should be set up. You spend a good amount of time on your data warehouse and figuring out what it should be structured like. And then if you get to it, and that's where I actually see some companies even fail already, is the analytics side. Like they never make it that far because there's too much money, too many resources, too many hours went into the setup of the infrastructure behind it. So analytics is when we actually have it visible to the end user, when the business users finally get some use out of it and see these reports. And that requires a very lengthy roadmap. And while you're doing this, there may be already changes in the business. And actually, we call this company, my company is called DAS42, and 42 is from one of my favorite books, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where they formulate the question, like what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and the computer thinks about it for 7.5 million years and comes up with 42. And it's just like how that is traditional BI, right? You ask the question and you wait forever, and at some point you get an answer, and it's not really what you wanted to get. And that really goes back to like, let's get an answer quickly, change your question, ask again, and move through that process. So in the approach that I'm proposing really, and advise most clients on, is let's set up get through extraction of data and loading of data quickly, have your data in a central place, potentially materialized or not, and then set up your BI layer, like your analytics infrastructure, where you can see reports and the end users can see reports. And now you can, with the business users in the same room with you, with the business users seeing those reports, set up the transformation layers that you do need. So you have this, if you just hit the next two, yeah, there we go, and then one more, yeah. And so you have this approach that really circles through, and you figure out what the transformation, what fact tables do you need, what cohorts are important to you, what should be your attribution by marketing channel, like what are the transformations that are necessary for your business. They don't happen up here, how it was in the classic approach. They happen later down the road as you already have reports available and dashboards available. I see many benefits to that. I also see some downfalls of that. Like this is a prototyping approach. Like you're figuring out what should be the dashboards I need to look at, what are the reports that we want to get to the user. I think we will, yeah, so if you just hit the next one. And we're going to talk about this a bit more. I think one of the later points that I'm going to talk about is the problems with this rapid approach. Number one, things get really messy, right? You're moving fast, you're prototyping. Not many people take the time to clean up and go through and just delete the things they don't use. They keep it around, like maybe I need it later. If you do that, at least document it. At least like write down like this was good, this was bad. Model your data. That's one thing I stretch a lot, and a lot of early stage startups really don't get it, and it's unfortunate that they don't get it, but it's very important that you define what something means, that you define what is a new buyer, what do we actually count as revenue, what do we not count as revenue, what is who belongs into this cohort, why is this a cohort? Like modeling that, defining it, documenting it, that's incredibly important, because then later you never have to fight with anyone, you never have to argue with anyone, you never have to actually think about it yourself and figure out what did I do back then. So modeling is incredibly important. And then, so this is one that I learned through experience. Because you're moving fast, results can be incorrect. So I had a presentation, really interesting tech company in the United States, and I was presenting to the executives in the company, the C-level. And one of my numbers on the dashboard, it was a prototype dashboard, but one number on there, the CFO knew by heart. It was the lifetime revenue, and they saw that was wrong because it wasn't using their definition of revenue. And now they questioned everything. My entire report, all the infrastructure underneath was questioned because they saw something that was wrong. And I think that's a huge mistake because it's not wrong, we just don't have the definition down yet. We haven't finished the prototype yet. So I highly recommend that you communicate with everybody that's involved. And this is a prototype, we're not done yet. You may want to pick, like don't pick lifetime revenue. I don't really put that into prototypes anymore. Now we have, your mid-January to early February revenue because that's a lot easier to defend. So there's some things you need, I think being very open, communicating this prototype is incredibly important. And then the last point, this is only a prototype. Another thing, and one reason companies hire us a lot of times is they develop the prototype, but they're so fast, they need to move to the next thing, the next goal they need to achieve, the next report someone needs. They don't take the time to go back and operationalize it, and it always is just a prototype, and at some point it's going to break. And that's, I think, where it's really important to articulate this is a prototype, and just because we have it done now, have the definition right and the numbers are correct, doesn't mean we can just move to the next one. Let's take a step back and just make sure it's operational. So that, in a nutshell, is really the rapid approach. Like, the important part here is this prototype. We still need to spend some time keeping it clean, keeping it documented.
For our product, it's a little bit different in the approach that Lucas was mentioning. So, and also that Jonathan is actively doing. We don't necessarily extract the data in some ETL process, but we keep the data if it's possible. We keep the data at the source, and when you do a report, we load the data from the original source directly. So we can use some replication. That's why we call it a logical data warehouse. So if it's required, if your dashboard needs to appear really quickly and you don't want to stretch your data sources, you extract the data. But if you want to have real-time data that is happening right now, with our tool, you can leave the data where it is, and you can, so to say, stream it through the server, and the server will take care of structuring the data and will take care of joining the data.